Hello everyone, I am the King of Underworld, and today I have something very magical, as such, to show you. Today, I would like to share a series I've wanted to make since I spent the last few days eating up anything Harry Potter related, so I thought I would turn that infatuation into a brand new story. Everybody likes the new series, I shall continue with it. With this idea, and just quick note before I start this episode is scripted. And if people want scripted stories, I can put a poll up tomorrow, but they will come out slower than unscripted videos. So, if that is the case, changes to upload will take a hit, but enough of that for now, and I hope everybody loves my little magical story. This story starts in a world that is very special. In this world, 80% of the population have a special power called a quirk. This power has abilities that range from transforming into towering giants to manipulating the various natural elements. However, the 20% of the population that don't have these special abilities have been seen as weak and need to be protected, and are useless. However, they are, in fact, more mysterious than they lead on to be. In this society filled up with superpowered individuals, there are heroes who use their power to protect the innocent. The populace from the twisted who seek to misuse their power. But this story focuses on a special being born in Masutafu, Tokyo Prefecture Hospital. This brightly lit room was filled with several doctors and wet nurses on standby as a green-haired woman, face dotted with freckles, was crying out in pain as she tightly grips the hand of a man with shaggy black hair. "Just one more push, honey." This statement was followed by a lot of loud, painful grunting. Nurses rushed forward as silence filled the room. A few seconds later, which felt like eternity to the newborn's parents, before a sharp cry filled the room, as the head wet nurse rose up with the crying infant in her arms gently, cleaning the baby, before she turned around to face the parents, walking over to the couple who were waiting in anticipation. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya. He is a healthy baby boy." Gently handing the boy to the green-haired woman, tears welling in her eyes. "He's so beautiful," while cradling the baby boy. "Yes, he is. And he's got your green hair." Barely being able to hold back his own tears. One of the nurses slowly approached the couple with a document. "Sorry, do you have a name for the boy already?" The green-haired woman replied meekly. "Yes, after looking at him, I know he is Izuku Midoriya," she said with a weak but bright smile. A few months passed as the couple were watching over a mischievous little boy with messy green hair and bright emerald green eyes that match his mother's. "You know, Inko, he certainly has your eyes alright," a grinning man was saying while poking the little boy's cheek. "He does, Sasashi, but he also has the same messy hair you have," giggling at the sentiment, and while picking up the baby. The weather outside was getting worse and worse, as the pitters and patters of rain started pummeling down harder and harder, before a loud bang of thunder bellowed out, and streaks of lightning filled the sky, illuminating the darkly lit living room. Sashi felt uneasy. He thought to himself while looking outside the window, "This storm, it isn't natural." coming too fast. Standing from the windowsill a little bit, he was staring outside for a few minutes. But then he was interrupted in his, thinking by Inko. Hey, is there something wrong? He snapped back to reality and he faced Inko. I don't know, but this storm isn't normal. And there's no reports that I've seen about a typhoon either. Another flash of lightning darted across the sky, before another blinding flash struck, dazing the couple, as Izuku started breaking into tears, as his mother went back to comfort him. Another boom was heard in the distance. However, this one was different. There was no flash of lightning. And then another. And another. Slowly getting closer, the booming was heard ringing out across the night sky. Hisashi faced the direction, at that same eerie feeling he was felt, tickling the back of his mind, was now screaming to take cover. He rushed to Inko, made her duck to the ground with Izuku in her arms, as two men crashed through the house with a loud bang. Just give up, All Might. You'll never defeat me. A tall man in a suit with white hair said laughingly and mockingly. As long as I'm alive, I'll fight against you and your tyranny, all for one. For Nana! A large blonde and muscular man covered in cuts and bruises said in retort, pushing himself back to collide fists with the white-haired man. Both of them are too preoccupied to notice the family in the corner of the room, hiding from the battle that was going inside their house. After a few minutes of back and forth between the two, the blonde hero is being pushed to his limits, as the white-haired man activated a quirk which created a spear-like tentacle that stabbed into the hero's gut, as blood was spilling out from the wound created. The blonde grunted in immense pain, as the woman in the corner, who was silent out of fear, shrieked at the sight. The white-haired man turned around to face the family with a devilish grin. All right, All Might, sit there. As you and watch, just as you're about to see, you're unable to save them. The tall figure starts walking towards the family. Hisashi stood up to try and fight against the man. You, stay away from my family! He shouted at the laughing man. He fired an air cannon. However, that grin was twisted and faded, as Hisashi's hand flicked out from his coat with a bold voice, shouting, Protego! A misty blue orb surrounded himself and Inko, as the air cannon shattered the wall behind them instead. I said, stay away from my family! Confringo! A large explosion hit the man in the chest, sending him flying into the wall. Hisashi checked on Inko to see that she was alright. But the room was quickly filled with maniacal laughter. Hisashi jumped back into a fighting position with his wand on full display. Amargus. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that there were not very many left in Japan. I'd killed most of them. But this is even better. Dusting himself off, the man stood back up. Wait, you said you were killing Margus? No, it can't be. But then that means... He turned towards Inko. Inko, run away! I'll hold him off for now. It's the Dark Lord. I thought it was just a rumor that he was in Japan. But seeing it now, not a rumor. He said with a panicked tone clearly ringing out in his voice. Unfortunately, running isn't an option for you. The man swiftly pulling out a wand from a portal. Petrificus totalis! As Inko was frozen in place. She was terrified, unable to make so much as a sound. The crying infant soon let out another horrible screech. Ugh, how annoying. Pointing his wand at the crying child, as he was attempting to silence him, shooting a red flash at the boy. However, Hisashi stood in his way, blocking the attack. Don't you dare touch my son! If you want to get him, you will have to kill me first! Clear rage shot out through his voice. That can certainly be arranged, he said with a menacing grin. As the two spellcasters started with a clash, as a flurry of spells collided against the room, each other not letting up for 1 second. Hisashi was at a disadvantage, as All for One was slowly closing the distance, pushing him onto his back legs, as he was on his last leg. He was protecting both Izuku and Inko, who was still petrified. The injured All Might was laying there speechless at the sight of two powerful wizards dueling. Confused at what was going on, he was using all his strength not to bleed out. He was cursing himself for being so weak. Damn! I need to help them. I need to protect them! Grunting as he slowly rose up. Hisashi was on his last legs, barely able to block the spell being thrown at him, before finally, Expelliarmus! The wand flew from Hisashi's hand and out of the building. Sorry, but I've grown sick of these games. But don't get me wrong, it was fun to toy with you. But you must die. Avada Kedavra! A green light had flashed and struck Hisashi as he fell lifeless to the floor. No! Hisashi! Inko shrieked, bursting into tears as her petrification wore off. All for One, you bastard! All Might punching the ground in anger, finally standing to his feet. His eyes met with All for One. Yes, that look of pure hatred. I can't wait to see you fall into despair. All for One pointed his wand at Inko as she holds onto Izuku as tightly as possible. Now to finish you two off. Avada Kedavra! The green-haired woman slumped against the wall. A single tear fell from her face that splashed onto the crying infants. All Might was screaming, No! All for One! As All for One quickly smiled at the, fast approaching All Might, before flashing another killing curse towards the boy, out of something that neither he nor All Might expected. Once the flash hit, it didn't work. All for One was extremely frustrated at the sight. What the? As he tried again, however, a bright flash of red and green light appeared. As All for One was thrown back, he was so weakened by the spell he had just thrown. It seems that it was reflected back on him, however, not powerful enough to kill him. As he looked at the infant, now crying even louder, as blood ran down his head, as a wound in the shape of a lightning bolt was now plastered on his forehead. As All Might got up and faced down the man, delivering a United States of Smash! Slamming down onto the, well, practically lifeless body that was all for one, taking him down, killing him. As after that, All Might walked over to the child, picked him up, holding him into his arm before he fell unconscious, landing against the wall. Just a few minutes later, people were seen entering the building. As they rushed up, and the first one to open the door was none other than Nighteye himself. It says, Toshinori. He rushed over and saw the carnage that had ensued, as people were surrounding them, and says, Sir, it's the Dark Lord. He's been killed. He says, what? As, yes, in fact, in this universe, Sir Nighteye, who's known for his famous precognition, was one of the most advanced divination auras in Japan. As he said, God, so it's true, he was back. But to think it was all for one. As, well, he looked over at Toshinori, who had a giant hole in his gut. It says, crap. We need somebody who's advanced in medical magic. We need somebody now. As one of the other auras that had joined him rushed over to All Might. Valnera Senentor. Valnera Senentor. The auras kept repeating as the wound slowly closed. However, it was barely enough. Any more or longer, he would have bled to death. As they rushed him over to a hospital, a medical hospital, Nighteye looked and remained over what had been transpiring in this residence, as he seen a baby infant boy laying next to All Might. As he picks him up and noticing the wound on his head, cleaned him up. And when he tried to use the same repairing spell, it didn't repair. It left a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. He said, Alright, we need to have this building patched up, and any of the neighbors, use Obliviate on them. But you know what I'm risking and finding out about the Wizarding World, okay? As all the auras around, well, just replied, Yes, sir. As Nighteye picked the boy up and left with him promptly. As the next day, a news coverage had unfolded. The news of the leader of a banded group of villains was taken down last night by All Might. However, due to the rough fight, he was put in grave, injuries. He'll be recovering overnight, but I expect to make a full recovery by next week. As the press was going wild over this, as there was also 2 recorded deaths, both of a businessman named Hisashi and a stay-at-home mum known as Inko. Now, in actual fact, these 2 were quite known in the wizarding world. Hisashi was a very well respected and well liked aura, so he was in charge of fighting against dark forces. And Inko was a very good handful mage who worked for the ministry. As it was quite the shock that the Dark Lord would take on such a fight and kill them. And a memorial was held in their place, as they were trying to decide what they were going to do with the child, seeing as he's got no living relatives in Japan, and not wanting to send him off at such a young age. Since Hisashi was actually a dear friend of Sir Nighteye, he decided to take in the boy. As we travel 5 years into the future, as the boy has grown up and is now very lively. As one day he was in kindergarten. He was being, he was being shown around by the teachers, as this was meant to be his first day. As he met a very well, let's just say well-liked boy named Buck Gokatsuki. He was outgoing and very loud, one of both of which he didn't really care much for. As he came over to introduce himself to the new kid, saying what his quirk was. As he just replied saying, I didn't have a quirk. As Bucko stopped being polite, saying, oh, is that so? I thought you were something special. But in actual fact, he didn't have a quirk, but instead he had magic. As is being taught by Sir Nighteye, the world that they live in is different from the world that they are born into. They are raised in the Muggle society, which had now grown to be quite powerful, in a sense, as they have now got to be human individuals running around, while the wizarding world must remain in the shadows, as they do not want to be spotted by the common folk, and therefore be attacked or destroyed. So they keep to themselves. As he was told he was a very special person. He survived somebody who was so powerful that it gave the mightiest wizards nightmares. The one that gave him the scar upon his head. This, as well as the fact he was told that he was never to reveal that he knows magic to anybody, and tell them that he was quirkless, or once he becomes of age, he chooses what kind of sorcerer he wants to be, and goes undercover as a person with a quirk to fit into society more. However, the boy who just heard the answer of I'm quirkless didn't care for those rules right now, as he started to notice the scar that was usually covered by his long green locks, and said, what is that on your head? As Izuku put his hand over it and said, oh, that's just the scar. You see, when I was younger, I fell over and hit my head. Huh. Quirkless and stupid, seems. Boy, your parents must be ashamed, wouldn't they? As, after hearing that sentiment, Izuku went quiet and a bit teary-eyed. As the caretaker said, Bucko, that was quite rude. What, I'm just talking about his parents. You see, young Izuku here, his parents died when he was a baby. Not feeling any remorse for a quirkless person, he didn't care, and said, well, I guess they're lucky enough not to find out you're quirkless. As he was very uptight, being thinking since a young age that he was special ever since he awakened his quirk of explosions. However, now Izuku was getting very angry, as some people around him started feeling a bit uneasy. Sparko said, what's wrong? Why is everybody moving away? As he saw the very, very prominent glare that was being shot at him by Izuku. As well as one of the glasses behind them shattered. As it seems that, well, he had awakened his quirk. However, it was an accidental release of magic due to rage. As since Nighteye was on many missions as both a hero and a detective for the, well, magical agencies, he was told that he couldn't train him, not yet at least, waiting until he turned 6 before introducing him to the magical arts. So, seeing as he was too young and he he used magic without realizing and causing a glass to shatter, everybody played it off as being his quirk and therefore having to go to the doctors. But since, when Nighteye got contacted, he said, damn, well, I'll pick him up straight away. Make sure he doesn't do anything and keep him separate. As the caretaker responded, yes, right away. As Nighteye came to pick him up and said, what did I tell you about getting angry? Says, I'm sorry, it's just, he said my parents would be happier being dead and finding out that I didn't have a quirk. As he knelt down beside the boy and says, your parents are very brave people. And, well, your father was my best friend. Aside from, obviously, my partner, I was very attached to him. And it made me sad to see him go. That's why I took you in. Don't let those people tell you otherwise. Your father was a great man. Even if this world might not have known it, in the Wizarding world and in our hearts, we both know that even if you didn't see him, you knew he was a great man. As the boy who had tears in his eyes started to wipe them away, as they went off to the quirk doctors, but knowing since they were going to find out that he was actually quirkless, but not knowing how the glass shattered, they decided to take him to a proxy doctor. So these were one of the very many quirk doctors around that were actually run by a magus, or a witch wizard. So they went over, as it was a friend of Nighteye's. That was an informant for the Ministry of Magic, as they would basically post as the base of operations. So they had gotten Izuku inside. Said, so, Izuku, would you please tell me what happened when he got angry? Well, I stared at this one kid who was making fun of my dead parents, and a glass behind me shattered, and I didn't mean to do it. I see. As he turned to Nighteye and said, what were their cover quirks again? Because if I'm going to be correct about this, I need to at least have some sufficient evidence to back up my claim, as you will. Nighteye nodded and said, well, if I remember correctly, Hisashi was going under as a fire breather, as he was always very good at fire spells. And Inko, she was very good at using levitation / object manipulation type magic. So, giving either one or combining both. Said, I've got an idea. The doctor suggested that, well, they combine them, as Nighteye inquired why, and said, the reason as to why we combine the quirks is that we can give him more range for him to learn magic. If he slips up, he can blame it on his quirk, as it could be him unlocking a new way of using it. And I won't be suspicious, as the paperwork will say it as a developing quirk, therefore more abilities would be attained. Said, okay, but would his power be? As it'll be listed as multi-kinesis, or kinesis just as normal. As he explained that many of the magical abilities can be attributed to him using his mind to either set things ablaze, lower the temperature, shatter objects, invade the minds of others, and levitate objects. Seeing as his parents had the ability to form into that kind of quirk, we can say that he needs to drink a lot of water, otherwise he would feel faint. Says, okay, I'll leave it with you, if you can get the document sorted and sent to me. Yep, no worries, Nighteye. Well, I'll be seeing you, young man, in the future, hopefully. Mr. Midoriya. As the man waved him off, and then sent the boy, as well as Nighteye, out. Nighteye? What is it? I want to learn more about magic. I want to learn more about my parents. As, well, Nighteye pulled out a very special photo from his jacket pocket. As he said, these were your parents. That's Inko, and that's Hisashi. Said, how is this picture moving? Said, that is a magic picture. Very different from the, well, smartphones you see nowadays. But basically, magic captures an image or, well, in this case, a video-like recording as its own living memory. It says, wow, I've got Mom's eyes. Yep, you certainly do have her eyes. And you certainly have Hisashi's shaggy hair, that's for sure. As he ruffles his hand through the, well, golden, well, no, green. As he runs his hands through his messy green hair, he's cheered him up by saying, well, I guess it's about time I start teaching you how to use your quirk, I guess. As when they went back into his house, he pulled out a small box. He said, this is very special. It was your father's. It was a 11.5-inch wormwood phoenix feather core. What does that mean? Well, what it means is it's a very special wand. There was only 2 of its kind ever made. I said, wow, and that was Dad's? It certainly was. The other one belongs with me. Wow, so they're like brothers. Exactly. You could say that, of sorts. Anyway, you use your wand as an extension of your own self. You channel your magic and your spirit through the wand, and it shall guide you. Using many spells, some simple, some very complex. However, miscasting some of these can have some very dangerous side effects. So please do not be willy-nilly with your spells. So I'll teach you a very simple spell. You can practice at this one. As he pulls out a feather from a little display piece as he lays it on the table in front of, well, Izuku, and says, alright, pay attention. Repeat exactly as I say. Wingardium Leviosa. As the feather in front of Izuku starts levitating up, said, wow, that's magic? Said, yeah, it is. It has very many uses, a lot of uses, I should say. This one allows objects to float in midair. You're able to control how high it floats up, or how long it does. Now, if you want to put the object back on the ground, you would repeat this. Descendo, as the feather started falling back to the ground. Said, wow, I want you to try and use these 2 spells. Once you're able to get the basics of spell casting and chanting down, I'll be able to teach you some more. As Izuku would try, well, for a considerable amount of time, said, Wingardium Leviosa, as the feather would fail to raise, as he was getting a bit discouraged, as he kept trying. Wingardium Leviosa, as he keeps mispronouncing it slightly, as he gets a bit frustrated, and just flicks his wand a bit too hard, and says, Wingardium Leviosa, as Without realizing it, he had flicked it at the wand at the bookcase as it started floating. As he started screaming, "Whoa!" As that sudden, outburst as well as noise that came from the bookshelf raising attracted the attention of Sir Nighteye, as an entire bookcase was lifting up, as usually the heavier the object, the harder it is to concentrate, yet he was able to levitate without even paying attention to it. Said, he's brilliant. Said, alright, now let's get it down to the ground, shall we? What was it that we say? As Izuku points the enormous wand that's in his hand at the bookcase and says, Descendo! As the bookcase now lowers down and touches the floor. As Sir Nighteye gives a very big smile. Says, you're just as smart and as brilliant as good old Hisashi. You should be proud. As he ruffles his hair again, as Izuku gave a very big smile. However, when it came to other school matters and other life matters, there was still a problem. While it was stated to the class that Izuku now had a quirk, since he was a very frail boy and often kept to himself, didn't stop him from being picked on by Bakugo, as he never grew up with him, so therefore never actually got used to his personality nor tried to get used to it, as he was a bit fed up with Bakugo and his antics as well as his bullying. And this led to them having a bit of a rivalry / hatred for each other. They didn't outright want to kill each other, but they did not like being in the same room for an extended period of time with each other, making classes almost unbearable. As this tension was felt by everybody throughout the future, this did not change and even went on through middle school. As one day, Sir Nighteye came back and said, I've got a special present for you. I said, what is it? Well, as you probably remember, today is your birthday. That's right. Of course I would know. I'm not dumb. Anyway, I decided to go take you somewhere special. As, well, they'll walk over to a fireplace as, well, Izuku would say, the fireplace is special? As bear in mind he is 13 years old, said, no. It's not the fireplace, but where it's going to take us. As he would hand Izuku some grey powder, and said, this is called flue powder. This little system allows us to travel all over the world in mere seconds. You just need to say the place of where you're going and have a clear picture of it in your mind, and it'll take you to where you want to go. So I want you to repeat after me. Diagon Alley. As Izuku would say, Diagon Alley. He said, okay. Now what I want you to do is throw the powder while saying Diagon Alley, and it'll teleport you to the place we're going. As, well, they both stood next to the fireplace as they both threw the powder and said, at the same time, Diagon Alley! As they whizzed off to, well, Diagon Alley. As it was a place located in Britain that was quite amazing to any young witch or wizard. Said, this is where it all started. What do you mean? Well, my father, who is a wizard, took me here on my 13th birthday. And we're getting you a special present. As they moved along through the stores, as they finally met up with a man who was towering over them, as he introduced himself as Hagrid. "Oh, what a trip you had, Hisashi," he said. "Very well, Hagrid." As he said, "Hagrid here is, well, a dear friend of mine." He says, "You bet, you betcha that's right, isn't it? I haven't seen you in years, though." "Busy with the magic, I say." Said, "Hagrid here isn't a wizard, per se. He can use magic, however he can only use very sparse amounts of it." "You'll have to tell him that straight away, give me a bad impression." Said, "Nothing like that, Hagrid. But Hagrid here is the groundskeeper and, frankly, animal master of Hogwarts." As Izuku tilted his head and said, "Hogwarts? You mean like that magical school that I've read in all my books?" "That's exactly right. Now I came down here to get you some textbooks, as I plan on teaching you personally. No school, while I would want to go back there. There's been a few incidents in the recent years. So, I prefer to teach you myself, as I can teach you a plain way of using your magic in everyday life." As they were both very happy to do this. As Hagrid, without meeting up with Hagrid, because they were giving him another present. As they gave him a pet owl. And they called this one Hedwig. As they remember seeing a composer make a similar sounding song called Hedwig's Theme, as he often liked listening to that in his spare time. But as the two walked around and introduced themselves into the wizarding world, it is my belief that one day we can hopefully coexist with muggles. However, due to our recent laws and the awakening of quirks, that's kind of thrown a wrench in the plans, you could say. But this shouldn't be a deterrent. In fact, it should bring us closer together. We might be beings that are powerful and be able to manipulate the laws of nature itself, but so can the many humans that have the fantastic powers that is beyond science fiction itself. As Izuku was left to wonder, if we could interact, what the world would be like. Well, my dream is that it would be a happy place. As this is where I'm going to leave off part 1 to What If Deku Was Harry Potter. As I'm at the last bit, it took me a couple hours to write a script, which, when you realize how fast you read and how long a story can get, you realize you read through it quite quickly, so yeah, it's kind of not fun. But I hope everybody liked this series. I will be happy to continue non-scripted, otherwise this can be a series that comes out every so often with a new scripting plotline, as I'm now in the last weeks of my holidays. So, I won't have as much time, after getting back into doing schoolwork, to be doing these scripts much, however, on the weekends. But anyway, I hope people actually like this theme, so I hope people like my whole references to the continuity, because, why not? I decided to be a bit chaotic. Personally, I love Harry Potter. I do. It was my childhood, so along with Star Wars and all that. But yeah, I hope everybody is able to capture the same magic that I wanted to show today in this episode. But I'm rambling on a bit too much. All I want to say is, thank you for listening. I've been the King of Underworld, and I hope everybody has a great day. Peace out.